That was a good movie. Imagine losing your memory every night or in general.
That'd be so scary. I wonder if you would realize that you can't remember, if that makes sense.
What would worry me is that you wouldn't be able to learn new things, right?
Hey, have you heard of that guy who had surgery to stop his seizures from occurring and ended up losing his memory? I remember they called that guy HM.
I think I have, but it was a long time ago, right? Like in 1953. I'm sure they just didn't know what was going on back then.
Well, that's true, but it was very important to learn about, especially for learning what areas of the brain are responsible for something as important as memory, so that we don't make the same mistakes twice.
I didn't think of it that way.
Oh yeah, didn't we learn about him in Dr. Hout's class from one of his lectures?
Yeah, he was knocked down by a bicycle when he was 9 years old and started having minor seizures when he was 10. His major seizures began when he was 16. His memory was literally frozen to when he was 16 years old. This was 11 years before his initial surgery. Seizures also ran in the family. 3 of his first cousins on his dad's side, the poor guy suffered a lot in his brain.
The neurosurgeon that performed the surgery was named William Beecher Scoville. He actually performed a bilateral hippocampal lesion removal in his medial temporal lobe. A good outcome was that they were able to reduce the amount of seizures to only twice a year. However, the bad part of the surgery was that he also suffered from anterograde amnesia.
What's that again? It sounds familiar.
Anterograde amnesia is where you lose the ability to create new memories after a traumatic event that initially caused the amnesia. Short-term memories are difficult to recall, however, the long-term memories that occurred before the event remain intact, so you aren't able to form any new memories.
So amnesia is an impairment of declarative and episodic memory?
Yeah, that's right.
So how is the general knowledge prior to the event affected?
Well, actually, it is interesting. Before the surgery, HM was tested using the Wechsler-Bellevue Intelligence Scale, and he received a score of 104. And after the surgery, he scored 112, mainly due to his better performance in arithmetic, meaning his general knowledge he gained before the surgery was not affected. However, the memory loss became apparent once he was tested using the Wechsler Memory Scale, where he performed well below the average.
Oh, wow. That would be such a hard thing to go through. Imagine not remembering your family and friends.
Yep, but they did learn a lot about what he was still able to do even after undergoing his surgery. He was able to describe a house that he lived in for a year and was able to redraw the floor plan for it. Since he was exposed to it constantly for years, he could commit it to memory. Yet the mazes that researchers made him perform could not be remembered because he wasn't allotted the long periods of time like he did with the house he lived in.
Yes, I remember reading an article about how when Brenda Milner would ask him if he had done a specific task before, he would tell her that he had never done it before, that it was his first time performing the task when really he had performed the task multiple times previously. And he was actually able to learn new tasks, he just didn't remember learning them.
What do you mean?
Well, within 3 days, HM was able to learn the mirror drawing experiment that Milner gave him. HM was supposed to draw a line between 2 outlines of a star pattern, and he could only see his hand, the pencil, and stars being reflected off a mirror. This meant that left and right were reversed. There is a visual and motor test that involves learning a new motor skill.
That is amazing what he was able to learn, a new motor skill despite suffering from amnesia after his operation.
It is, isn't it? Furthermore, an experiment demonstrated a contradiction in another hypothesis that medial temporal lobe pathology is associated with rapid forgetting. In another experiment on HM, which utilized picture recognition tasks, HM demonstrated normal forgetting, which disproved the prior hypothesis.
So HM's declarative memory of the testing sessions was absent, but he could retain the non-declarative knowledge for as long as a year.
Wow, that's fascinating.
It is. He showed us that the addition and retention of visual motor skills relies on substrates aside from the medial temporal lobe. Scientists now give greater significance to the structures in the parahippocampal region for visual recognition memory, spatial memory, and semantic memory. So different medial temporal lobe structures act independently.
HM really contributed a lot to what we know about specific parts of the brain and where certain functions are found in the brain. It's a shame that amnesia is so difficult to study.
I agree. Much of the learning we've done today about the brain has come from lesioning of the brain, which requires a dead body, of course. In the case of HM, he survived trauma from having numerous seizures for years and underwent experimental surgeries to stop these seizures. Because of him, we're able to perform studies on his memory after the accident, such as a task Milner gave him.
And HM has now passed away, so there was only so many studies that could be done while he was alive. Now that we know the effects of removing part of the temporal lobe, it is not performed anymore.
It really is a shame that events had to lead to HM losing his memory, but it did make the advancement of this specific field of science. People who survive extreme brain trauma or undergo experimental operations such as HM are rare, so the opportunity to learn from such people does not arise frequently enough for scientists to be able to answer all the questions we may have about what amnesia does and how it functions. Since HM, there were only 2 other patients with similar cases by Penfield and Milner who had a left temporal lobectomy, including a large hippocampal removal.
At least the resections have some benefits. It lessened some of HM's symptoms. Before the surgery, his seizures were debilitating and he could not live a normal life. For a year after the surgery, his symptoms were improved. Antegrade amnesia was a major side effect, therefore, it is a complicated issue.
I don't think that people appreciate it as much as they should.
You're right. It is important to all of us because memory can be what shapes a person into who they are. A lot of people believe that it contributes to personality. So if you take away memory, would you take away who the person is?
Probably not. HM still had a sense of humor and knew that he was different. He could still understand and make jokes, which show people that personality can be different. But amnesia is great to learn about by everyday people because it affects a lot of families.
It is important for every individual to know about what happens with amnesia in general. Depending on the individual situation, they will not completely forget everything. Some things will be spared.
And memory is something that affects every aspect of a person's life. Their daily life is made more difficult because as soon as another topic comes to the person's attention, the person forgets the previous topic, just like how HM wouldn't remember talking to someone just half an hour ago.
Since it is different for each person, it is important to learn where it comes from to help bring peace of mind. Any type of information to better understand the person is a good thing.
Don't forget about if people get in accidents.
Oh yeah, that can be scary.
But it is important to know what can possibly happen to a person when trauma occurs. HM's life was changed in the blink of an eye from a surgery, and unfortunately, this can happen to anyone. Everyday people should care about this topic because we should all care about what's going on in the world of science, even if we have no formal education in the field of science, nor if it pertains to our line of work. This knowledge can help us be better aware of what to expect realistically.
Wait, remember how we said he could recall his house's floor plan and even redraw it? Does that mean he can commit things into long-term memory with constant exposure?
It could be. There is still much work that needs to be done in order to have a complete understanding of the mechanisms of relational processing. The way we measure time is by our memories. In HM's case, his time was frozen to when he was 16 years old. Scientists could really look into it.
Yeah, especially since memory is a topic that affects every person. Any research in this area is relevant.
It's important to know what disorders such as amnesia are and how they affect people. In order to really understand this, we must also have some education about factors related to amnesia, such as what is going on neurologically. HM's accident was tragic, but the silver lining of his accident is that the world was able to learn so much about brain functions because of studies done to better understand how amnesia and brain trauma are related to one another.
So basically, shout out to HM and his hippocampus.